Walter's Sports Bar has been recognized by many local publications as one of the best sports bars in Washington, D.C., located across the street from Nationals Park and open year-round.
A massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, especially these days. 8 different settings, adjustable intensity, plus it's heated, and it just feels so good. Yes, a massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, but when it can come with a car, suddenly it seems quite practical. The all-new 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan, packed with premium features like available massaging front seats, it only feels extravagant.
Breaks he sets, checks the runners, and delivers. Swinging a line drive right center field. On the run is Lyle toward the gap. He can't get there. Playing on a hop. Juggles it. This is going to score 1 run. Second runner coming to the plate. And the throw offline. Not in time. Story scores from second. Meyer all the way from first on a double by Jarren Duran. And the Red Sox have made this a huge top half of the 5th inning. They have scored 6 runs in the innings. Now Boston 8 and Washington nothing.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at Nationals Park. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. What is it about former Nats starting pitchers pitching well against the Nats in Friday games at Nationals Park this season? Friday evening, May 9th, the Nats, in a 10-0 loss to the St. Louis Cardinals at Nationals Park, got worked by Eric Fedde. He tossed a 6-hit shutout, 8 strikeouts, no walks. Friday evening, June 6th, the Nats beat the Texas Rangers at Nationals Park 2-0, despite Patrick Corbin allowing 2 runs in 8 innings. And now this most recent Friday, July 4th, the Nats lost to the Boston Red Sox at Nationals Park 11-2 in game 1 of a 3-game series. Lucas Giolito, 1 run, 7 2/3 innings, 7 strikeouts. So the Nats now 37-51. The run differential is at -77, second worst run differential in the National League as we record this on July 4th afternoon. This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by Mason Kalfas, the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. Mason has been with us since our first season. You can reach him at 202-486-3535. You can find us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. Nats starting pitcher Michael Soroka, he on Friday officially allowed 7 runs in 4 innings. 4 Nats relievers on Friday officially combined to allow 4 runs in 5 innings. A feel-good July 4th game for the Nats. This was not. Also, the Nats prior to the game announced a flurry of roster moves. But Mark, this bizarre phenomenon of former Nats starting pitchers pitching well against the Nats in Friday games at Nationals Park this season does continue. I don't know why this is the case, but this very much has become the case.
I think you've cracked the code, Al. What is about Fridays and ex-Nats? Let's just hope that before the season's over, the Phillies don't decide to give Joe Ross a spot start on a Friday night at Nats Park, because God knows what might happen in that one. You know, it's a little bit weird. You know, they're all their own individual situations. I will say this about Lucas Giolito. It had been 9 years since he pitched at Nationals Park. He was a rookie for the Nationals. He made 6 appearances late that season, 4 of them starts, and then was traded to the White Sox, the big trade for Adam Eaton. And he had not been back here since. Just kind of worked out that way. Now, he's gone through a whole lot since then, ups and downs, injuries, success, failures. He's back finally healthy and pitching well. And you saw him at his best in this game. And I mean, I don't know that anybody would have believed that Lucas Giolito would still be here 9 years later had they not made that trade. But I'm sure it felt good for him to come back here and kind of finally show everyone in D.C. what he can be all along, because we certainly never saw that. And a lot of people who've watched him over the years haven't seen nearly enough of that kind of thing from him.
How about the nature of these Nats games over the last week or two in terms of the final scores? We are seeing some wild final scores to Nationals games in recent days. I mean, if you just start with what happened a week ago here, so late night on Friday night, June 27th, the 15-9 win at the Angels. Then the following night, an 8-2 loss at the Angels. Then this past Wednesday in game 1 of the doubleheader against the Detroit Tigers, an 11-2 loss, followed by a 9-4 Nats win. then an 11-7 Nats win on Thursday evening, and now we have what we had on Friday. It feels like these days the Nats are either super impressive offensively in a comfortable victory, or the Nats get stomped. It's like one of two extremes these days for the Nats.
And I think that's very emblematic of this season. It's been such an enigma. One night they can look legitimately good. The next night they can look like the worst team in the league. And I think it very often, I mean, it boils down to that their offense is inconsistent, yes. But I think the consistent theme there is that once they get down, if they don't get a halfway decent start from their guy in the rotation, and now Davey Martinez is turning to the guys in his bullpen who are not the so-called A bullpen, you've seen a lot of these games get out of hand. And this certainly qualifies as one of those. And you mentioned earlier the run differential and how bad that looks, especially compared to the record. To me, that's really a product of how many blowout losses they've suffered. Games that maybe were sort of close for a while, and then the B bullpen came in and turned them into complete lopsided messes. And that's not where you want to be, obviously, but I think it's not necessarily a reflection of how on any given night they can look good and have actually won some impressive games against some good teams here lately.
Well, and what's funny, too, is that if you go through the Nats game log for this season, they actually have had a decent number of blowout wins, but they just have gotten wrecked in enough losses to where that run differential is what it is, which is not very good, one of the worst in the majors. So Michael Soroka was the Nats starting pitcher on Friday, and he had a poor outing. You know, we've been talking about the oddity that is Michael Soroka's 2025 season. Very good peripherals, but the run prevention has not been good. In this game, you could argue the peripherals were not that bad. 6 strikeouts, 2 walks. He threw a lot of strikes, but, you know, at some point, don't give up runs. And Soroka in this game gave up a bunch of runs. He officially allowed 7 runs in 4 innings. He gave up 9 hits, which were 2 doubles and 7 singles. He issued a hit by pitch. As mentioned, 6 strikeouts, 2 walks, and he threw a lot of strikes, 93 pitches, 60 strikes, 33 balls. But once again, he has an outing that starts off well and then just completely unravels as the outing goes on. You know, it would be nice if you could combine Soroka's season with like Jake Irvin's season, and you could take Soroka's first innings and give them to Irvin, or take Irvin's, latter innings and give them to Soroka. Either way, you'd have a really good starting pitcher, but otherwise you have 2 guys who have some rough numbers. And, Michael Soroka now, you're looking at 12 starts, ERA of 5.40. We can talk about the peripherals all we want, but that's not good, a 5.40 ERA.
No, ultimately it is about the performance that the bottom line. What did you give up in the end? And you can look at the other numbers and say, okay, he should be better than that. That would suggest that things are going to start to turn in his direction at some point. But I think if you've watched him enough this year, you can see why those are the numbers. He has trouble sustaining it through an entire start. And in this case, he really put himself behind the 8 ball. He had a long first inning, didn't give up runs, but had to face with traffic on the bases. Had a long second inning in which a couple of runs scored. And then even though he had success after that, he's got, 4 strikeouts in the span of 5 batters between the 3rd and the 4th. He's already at 78 pitches before he takes the mound for the 5th inning, and he's facing the Red Sox lineup a 3rd time. And as he told us, he was dealing with what he felt like was just not his usual crispness on his fastball that he would normally have, both in terms of velocity and in terms of command of that. So by the time you get to the 5th inning, you sort of have a hunch that it may fall apart. Now, it fell apart in a hurry for him. 5 batters faced, all of them reached. He's out of the game. And I know, because I hear it on Twitter /X and elsewhere from fans saying, why even let him start that inning knowing that he struggles once he gets past like the 80 pitch mark? I hear you. But if you look what the schedule has been here lately, the doubleheader they had, the stretch they're in, and just the overall issues they have with their bullpen, I don't think you can afford to pull him after 4 innings in that case. Maybe you could say, okay, 2 batters into the 5th, we're going to pull you if things don't go well. But they just don't have the depth down there to account for something like that. It would be wonderful if they had 7 or 8 quality relievers and you could give Michael Soroka the, 18 batter treatment. You go through the lineup twice and that's it, no matter what, no matter how many innings, no matter what the score is. But they don't have the depth to do that. And so I think they feel compelled to try to squeeze a little more out of him. And you see what happens. Very often he has not been able to finish the job.
No, he does the opposite of Costanza. He's not ending on high notes. That is crystal clear as this season has gone on. And with the bullpen, I guess we've gotten to a point now to where we are desensitized to these outings, but the bullpen continues to be really bad. The conversations that we were having about the bullpen being improved, those seem like a distant memory at this point. 4 Nats relievers on Friday officially combined to allow 4 runs in 5 innings. Zach Brixey officially allowed 2 runs in 1 inning. He in a 7-run fifth for the Red Sox. Gave up an RBI single, a 2-run double, a walk, and another RBI single. Andrew Chafin, who is back, he tossed a scoreless top of the 6th. Ryan Ludus allowed 2 runs in 2 innings. He in the top of the 8th gave up a one-out first pitch, 2-run homer by Trevor Story to left field for an 11-1 Red Sox lead. Ludus part of the Nats' many moves on Friday morning. We'll get to those. And Eduardo Salazar did toss a scoreless and hitless top of the 9th inning. But here we are now with the Nats bullpen. The relief pitching ERA for the Nats this season now is at 5.91, dead last in the majors. And again, there is this, I think, desensitizing that has happened of like, okay, how many times are you going to say the same thing? The bullpen is awful, but the bullpen is awful. Like, I don't think you can highlight that enough. And I tell you something else, man, starting, I guess, with the 11-game losing streak, we've seen so much of this, way too much of this. A 7-run 5th inning in this game for the opposition. How many blow-up innings have the Nats allowed over these last few weeks? Like innings in which the Nats have allowed, 4 or 5 runs or more. It just has happened over and over again. It's one thing to give up 2 or 3 runs in an inning. To get smashed like that, a 7-run 5th, that has happened way too often in recent weeks.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to what I mentioned earlier about the bullpen depth and the lack of truly reliable arms that David Martinez can turn to. When he's going to guys who don't have the experience or the track record, and you're hoping they can stop the bleeding, and then they not only don't stop the bleeding, but they add to it, and now you have to consider bringing in somebody else to finish out the inning on top of that. That's where you have this issue where things just kind of build and compound on themselves, and you end up in the spot that they're in. They didn't have most of their top guys available for this game because they had to use them all to win a game that wound up being closer than it should have on Thursday night. And that's the domino effect of it. And that's why you're seeing guys like Brixey, who, he had a little stretch there that he looked all right, but for the most part, he has not looked the part of a big league reliever. He has been subject to blow-up innings. Ryan Ludus, and we'll get to the roster move that allowed for him to even be here again to pitch in this game. We've seen from him, I think what we need to see from him, it's not going to be pretty, and he's not the guy to stop the bleeding. And Eduardo Salazar, the one guy who did post a 0 for them, he's been a disaster most of the year. It was sent down at one point, came back up, hasn't been a whole lot better since. So when you're relying so much on, say, Brad Lord and Cole Henry and Jose A. Ferrer, who have been erratic in their own right, then you really are up a creek when you have to go to the guys beyond them and ask for something. And this is where you can say, yeah, it's improved and they've made some changes and it's not quite as bad a situation they were in earlier in the year. You can't get by with 3-4 relievers. You need more than that. And not that they all have to be great, but you need to be able to, in a game like this that you're already trailing, you need to be able to say, okay, give me 2 guys who are just going to finish this game for me no matter what. Maybe they'll give up a run or 2, but they're going to be efficient. They're going to get out of it. And that's not the case at all when you look at the names that they're dealing with here. If they had organizational depth, I can think of at least 3 guys in this bullpen who probably would not still be in the big leagues at this point.
Hey, Al Galdi here for Window Nation. July 4th weekend is around the corner, and for many people that means that summer vacation is coming up. Will your windows keep your home protected while you're away? Save yourself the headache of coming home to a potential break-in by replacing your windows today with Window Nation windows. Right now, when you buy 4 windows, you get 4 windows free, plus you get a free exterior door when you purchase a house full of windows. And on top of that, you won't have to put any money down, pay any interest, or deal with any monthly payments for 24 months. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. In this economy, what Window Nation is offering right now is a great deal. Your electricity bill is another good indicator of how well your windows are working, especially with summer temperatures here to stay. Lucky for you, Window Nation offers top quality, energy efficient vinyl windows built to withstand the sun sun's heat and keep your home cool. And did I mention that Window Nation windows come with a lifetime warranty? Don't miss your chance to protect and upgrade your home with Window Nation windows. Buy 4 windows, get 4 windows free now through June 30th. And remember, you won't pay a thing for 24 months. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION or windownation.com. And tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast.
LinkedIn Jobs is here to help small business owners with that crucial step of making the right hires. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates you can manage all in one place. Here's how it works. Simply post your job, and LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. You can either post your job for free or pay to promote it, and promoted jobs get 3 times more qualified candidates. Find out why more than 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring today. Find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/natschat. That's linkedin.com/natschat to post your job for free. linkedin.com/natschat. Terms and conditions apply.
A massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, especially these days. 8 different settings, adjustable intensity, plus it's heated, and it just feels so good. Yes, a massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, but when it can come with a car, suddenly it seems quite practical. The all-new 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan, packed with premium features like available massaging front seats, it only feels extravagant.
If you're putting in the work, your food should too. Thrive Market is a no-junk online grocery store that helps you clean up your pantry, cutting over 1,000 plus shady ingredients from the stuff you eat every day. From high-protein snacks and anti-inflammatory pantry staples to performance supplements and recovery blends. You'll find high-quality food that actually lines up with how you want to eat. Check it out at thrivemarket.com/podcast to get 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. Fuel better without the hassle.
And a swing and a drive in the air to right center field deep. This one way back to the warning track of Abreu, looking up, and it's off the wall in play. Rounding third is House coming home. He will score on a booming RBI double off the big 14-foot 8-inch wall in right center field. So it is indeed an 11-game hitting streak for Dalen Lyle. Career best, of course, in his rookie season, his 5th double of the year, and his 5th run batted in. And it's now the Red Sox 11 and the Nationals 2.
We mentioned the Nats' struggles against Lucas Giolito on Friday. The Nats offensively in this game, just 2 runs, just 6 hits, which were a double and 5 singles. The Nats did work 3 walks, but the Nats went 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position. Dalen Lyle as the Nats starting right fielder and number 7 batter, 1 for 4 with an RBI double. Keibert Ruiz as the Nats starting catcher and number 8 batter, 1 for 4 with a single as he is back. So we mentioned the flurry of roster moves announced by the Nats on Friday morning. Among those moves, the reinstatement of Keibert Ruiz from the 7-day concussion injured list. June 24th, the Nats put Ruiz on the 10-day injured list with a head contusion. June 27th, the Nats announced having transferred Ruiz to the 7-day concussion injured list. Now he's back. A corresponding roster move was the Nats announcing having optioned catcher Drew Millas to AAA-Rochester. But nice to have Keibert Ruiz back. Obviously, he's having a bad season, but, guy suffers a concussion. You don't like to see that, so he's healthy again. Good news.
Yeah. Not a long-term issue. So that's encouraging because you don't really know when that sort of thing happens. But it's funny because when they initially did not diagnose him with the concussion, it almost sounded worse or felt worse than when they did diagnose and said, okay, we're moving you to the 7-day IL instead. And the feeling was he's already able to get on the field and do some things, is probably not going to be out for that long. And, they didn't send him on a minor league rehab assignment. He felt like he was ready to go, had done enough on the field the last few days. They threw him back in there. Now, yes, he's got to start performing better. Of course, we know that. I think deep down he knows that as well. But for what could have been a really scary situation and something that had long-term lingering effects, knock on wood, it doesn't appear to have been anything like that.
Well, the headline roster move announced by the Nats on Friday morning was them announcing having placed starting pitcher Trevor Williams on the 15-day injured list due to a right elbow sprain. And I got to tell you, and I'm guessing I'm not the only person who thought this, when I initially saw this, I said to myself, all right, this is one of these deals where you find an injury in order to park someone who is struggling on an injured list. But in reading and what you wrote about this does seem to be a legitimate injury for Trevor Williams. This does not seem to be some phony baloney injury concocted by the team to take a guy who's having a wretched season and park him on the 15-day IL. He does seem to be legitimately hurt here.
Yeah, he absolutely does. I think the key here is if it was one of those situations where they're concocting something, you want to call it that, or convincing him that maybe he'd be best served to take some time off, the terminology you'd probably hear is something like inflammation, a very generic, mild-sounding term. When you say right elbow sprain, not strain, a sprain is the elbow ligament, okay? That's a serious injury. And he went for an MRI. They're kind of still waiting to find out what they're going to do with it. But reading between the lines and the way he described it, I asked him how this was compared to what he dealt with last year. Now, last year he was out for 3.5 months with what was officially termed a forearm flexor strain. Now, that maybe doesn't sound as severe as it was, but it actually is a considerable injury that sometimes leads to an elbow ligament and a Tommy John situation. And the words that he used for it was that this was pretty comparable to what he had last year in terms of how he felt, where it is in his arm. And while nobody's putting any kind of timetable on it, I was reading between the lines thinking to myself, he's going to be out for an extended period of time. And we may not find out anything for a little bit, but there's maybe some consideration of surgery here once they get a better idea of just how severe that sprain is. So while it's certainly, there's a cynical way to look at this and say they found a way to not put their worst starting pitcher on the mound every fifth day and maybe open the door for a Cade Cavalli to come up now. That may be true, but I don't think this is a case that they concocted anything. I think he's legitimately hurt. I think he came out of his last start and said it did not feel right. And I think the troubling thing in a lot of ways is, he pitched really well last year and then went on the IL. And I know he wasn't performing as well this year, but he did make 17 starts. There may be something in the way that he's trying to pitch, the mechanics, the way he's trying to be successful and kind of resurrect his career after a rough stretch that has led to significant injuries 2 years in a row. And let's, by the way, remember the fact that, he's signed for another year beyond this one.
I also wonder if this is his body telling him that he's not meant to be a starting pitcher. If you look at the results and you look at the ailments, maybe he's not meant to be a starting pitcher. Maybe he should be a reliever. He has had success as a reliever. I wonder if he's healthy enough to pitch next season, if maybe that's the prudent approach with him, that you got to sort of swallow your pride and say, okay, he's not a young guy, relatively speaking, in terms of baseball players. Like maybe it's time to embrace being a relief pitcher and go that way. So in terms of the rotation here, the Nats have not announced a starting pitcher for Game 3 of this series against the Red Sox Sunday afternoon at 1:35. Williams now out of the rotation. Do you think we're looking at Cade Cavalli on Sunday afternoon?
The stars are certainly aligned for that to be the case. Now, even if Williams doesn't get hurt, he would have had to pitch on short rest to pitch on Sunday because of the doubleheader the other day. And we know, given the struggles that he had, he wasn't going to be able to come back on short rest. They weren't going to do that to him or to Mackenzie Gore. You're not going to do that to him. So I think they were already faced with a potential decision anyways. Now it really does open the door. And if you look at Rochester's weekend pitching schedule, Cade Cavalli's not listed anywhere on there and has been now a full week since he last pitched for them. So while they're not saying anything officially, it certainly lines up to suggest that we're going to see him on Sunday, and I guess it may depend on how that one goes, but I would imagine we're going to see him for more than one start and finally get a sense of what he can be at the big league level. Now, let's keep this in mind. His last start, not good at all, 7 runs in 3 innings. Prior to that, had a 7-start stretch that was very good. A lot of strikeouts, very few walks, very few runs allowed. I don't know that if it's purely a case of has he earned the right to come back up with his performance? I don't know that's really where he is right now. But I think we've all waited long enough to find out. And I think it's time to find out, can Cade Cavalli have success in the big leagues? Can he stay healthy? And I think we're finally about to find out the answer to that, at least get a sense of it here.
Yeah, and the Nats don't have much starting pitching depth. I mean, just be honest about this. The organizational starting pitching depth in terms of major league ready arms just is not there. And so if not Cade Cavalli, then who? There aren't many other viable candidates at this point. And so it may just be that Cavalli has to continue his development at the major league level, and you hope for the best. And then with Ryan Ludus, so the Nats on Friday morning announced having recalled Ludus from AAA-Rochester. This just one day after optioning him to Rochester as the corresponding roster move to reinstating reliever Andrew Chafin from the 15-day injured list. I'm always interested in stuff like this. Did Ludus actually go back to Rochester and then come back the next day, or did he never actually leave the vicinity of the team?
I don't believe he left. He would have been, quote unquote, sent down on Thursday afternoon when they activated Chafin. So he would have been informed mid to late afternoon on Thursday. And by that point, they already knew that Trevor Williams needed the MRI. I don't know if they had the results yet, but they knew something wasn't right with him. I'm going to guess, I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to guess they said, don't go anywhere quite yet. There's a chance something else is going to go on here. We may need to recall you and bring you back. And for those asking, like, why are you doing that for a guy that they clearly decided wasn't big league material and it struggled and then struggled again in this game? Right now, you need as many relievers as you can. And he may be headed back down in 2 days if Cade Cavalli is called up to start on Sunday. But for the moment, you need 9 relievers. Try to get through these next few days and then reset everything after that. So my guess would be he's probably on a short leash again. And I'm sure it's a tough spot for him. He thinks he's been demoted. Oh, no, wait, hang on. By the way, stick around. And then we're going to pitch you in a game that we're losing by a bunch and you give up 2 more runs. It's not a great situation to be in. And I probably think that deep down he knows where he's ultimately headed. But he got at least a couple more days in the big leagues out of it until they decide what they're going to do with Sunday's starter.
Good crowd for the Nats at Nationals Park on this July 4th, 37,355. But the Nats do lose by 9 runs, and the Nats are one of the few teams in the majors with a better road record than home record. You rarely see that. The Nats, though, now 19-25 on the road, 18-26 at home. It's not common for something like that to be the case to where you're better on the road than at home. Now, the Nats have an interesting history with this kind of thing. From a postseason perspective, the Nats have been a lot better on the road than at home. We certainly saw that in the 2019 World Series. But just looking at some of these home record versus road record discrepancies, like the New York Mets are 31-13 at home versus 19-25 on the road, appreciably better at home. And again, the overwhelming majority of MLB teams now, and you go through any season, you'll see better home records than road records. But this season, for whatever reason, the Nats have actually been better on the road than at home. Not by much, but better on the road.
Yeah, I think they maybe feel less pressure on the road, not as much expected of them, perhaps, when you have a young team. And especially given that losing streak they went through against 2 of the dregs of the league and couldn't even beat them. Maybe there was this feeling of oh man, we better win these games or we're really in trouble. And that only made things worse, as opposed to then they headed out west to face the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Angels. And they played a looser brand of baseball, a much better brand of baseball. Now, they did just take 2 out of 3 from the Tigers, who, as you know, are a very good team. So that was a good sign. This was a lifeless game from them. Let's see what they do the rest of the weekend against the Red Sox, who are, kind of middling themselves right now and not in a particularly good stretch, especially after the Rafael Devers trade. So we'll see. But it is true. I believe they've played better on the road, and I believe they've played better against better competition for whatever reason. I think there's just a feeling of looseness, of less pressure in those situations where maybe less is expected of them. I mean, that's something you got to overcome, because you should not be feeling that way right now when you're playing at home, especially against teams with sub 500 records. So we'll see if that improves over the rest of the year. But that's my hunch as to maybe why that's been the case.
This installment of Nat Chat brought to us by Mason Kalfas, the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. Mason has been with us since our first season. You can reach him at 202-486-3535. 635. Game 2 for the Nats against the Red Sox Saturday afternoon at 4:05. Mitchell Parker will be the Nats starting pitcher. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. Hit us up on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. And we have a website you can check out, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
And it gets worse. The team working on the statue in Lafayette Square kind of over-smoothed it. They ground the head down to about the size of a softball. And that spells trouble.
All right, well, why don't we smooth the head down to nothing, stick a pumpkin under its arm, and change the nameplate to Ichabod Crane. All right, that's it for me.